Raiders Rawport back with another video today, and what I want to touch on right now is the first ever female CEO in NFL history, Amy Trask, who was with the Raiders from 97 to 2013. Many knew her and recognize her and know her as the Princess of Darkness when it comes to the Raiders organization. This woman was such a great person and a great businesswoman. She was great in law. She's from LA. She was going to Raider games. She was an intern. She eventually got hired as the CEO and did a hell of a job. She held this team together. She did so much for Al Davis, and we'll get into the other stuff, but what I want to get into right now was right here. She talks about what happened in 2002, the day of the Super Bowl, and everything that happened with Barrett Robbins. And we're going to get into this because this has a lot to do with what Jerry Rice and Tim Brown said years ago about they felt that it was rigged by Callahan in favor of his friend John Gruden, who now was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but was previously our head coach. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll go on from there. Raw and Uncut, Raider Nation, let's go.
Talk to me about your experience in 2002, because you definitely had a unique approach. So will you share that story? I really would love you to do so.
We had a challenge. As I said, no 2 weeks off. And then we were facing our former coach who knew all of our signals. So no time to really change the signals. That was the football challenge. They knew everything we were going to do. But we had another challenge, and it's very, very sad. Yes, it absolutely impacted us on the field, but it also impacted a human life. Barrett Robbins was missing from our facility in San Diego for a number of days, and ultimately didn't play in the game. And I'll back up for 1 second and tell you that the morning of the game, I went out for a run. And when I got back to the parking lot of the hotel, and this was early. This was, 5 a.m., before 6 a.m. As I was getting back to the hotel, I saw Barrett getting out of a cab, and he was absolutely fine. He was, in a state where he could have played in the game. And the reason, we had a lovely conversation. He went to his room. I was not aware he had been missing. That had not been shared with me. So when I had this conversation with Barrett, I didn't know the backdrop. I didn't know that there had been issues. And I had a conversation with him, which suggested that he was fine and ready to go. Get up to my room. A few minutes later, Al calls me and says, the coach and the gentleman who was overseeing our football ops had decided they didn't want Barrett to play. They didn't think he could play. And I said to Al, I just saw Barrett. I just saw him 10 minutes ago in the lobby. He can play. What are you talking about? And Al said, he listened to me. I explained my conversation with Barrett. Boy, Susie, this is bringing back memories. I haven't shared all this with anyone to this extent ever. And I said to Al, no, he can play. I just had a conversation with him. And he said, kid, the coach and the guy who is overseeing our football, and I'll tell you, Bill Callahan and Bruce Allen decided they didn't want Barrett to play. And I said, he can play. And Al said, he was leaving it up to Bruce and to Bill. I got off the phone and I looked at my husband and I said, we just lost this game. And he said, what?
Why wouldn't they let him play?
Well, let me just finish why I said, if I could. The reason I said we just lost this game is up until Super Bowl, we had started the same 5 offensive linemen in every single game that season, regular season and playoffs. And our offensive line was a well-oiled machine. And I knew that when we sat Barrett, that I thought we'd lose the game. Their view, and I haven't discussed this at length with Bill or Bruce since then, was that he had gone missing and they didn't think that was the right thing. And of course, it's not right for someone to go missing, but Barrett had medical issues, which I think should have been taken into account.
Yes, he did. But do you understand Amy Trask? And maybe it's got something to do with her being a woman, but how she understands, Barrett went out on a bender and this and that, but it doesn't mean he can't play. She's seen him. She talked to him. She didn't know he was missing on a bender in Tijuana, right? But to her, he looked like he was good and he was ready to play. Do you remember what Tim Brown and Jerry Rice said? We'll get into that later, but let's keep moving with Amy Trask, former CEO of the Oakland Raiders, telling us the low and the get down on what happened the game day with Barrett Robbins on game day of Super Bowl 2002.
And they didn't believe he should be able to play with the team. And the point I made to Al, and I make this point a lot, when you sit someone because you're disciplining them or don't believe they should play because of some sort of behavior, you're not just disciplining that player, you're harming the whole team. So yeah, maybe you wanted to sit Barrett because you didn't think Barrett should play because he had let his team down. And again, there were medical issues associated with it. But irrespective, when they chose to sit Barrett, they harmed the whole team.
You see exactly what happened when Callahan and Bruce Allen decided that they weren't going to play Barrett Robbins, right? That's why I think what Tim Brown and Jerry Rice were talking about when they said that they think that Callahan kind of threw the game is because Robbins could have played. He could have started. The players were okay with what happened. It's kind of what happened in the league in the 70s. Guys would go on benders and then they would show up and be ready to play. It was the NFL. It's the way it was. But Bruce Allen and Callahan decided that he wasn't going to play. And our offensive line was the best line in the league. And like she said, had played together every game and were hogs, savages. Al Davis, I hate to say this, but that's when we knew Al Davis was no longer the Al Davis that we knew, because he could have made the call. Hey, you're going to play Barrett. I don't care what you say. This is my player and you're going to play him. But Al Davis didn't do that. Al Davis was no longer himself. He was no longer the Al Davis that we knew. And he allowed Callahan and Bruce Allen, and Davis trusted Bruce Allen. So Bruce Allen co-signing it. So Bruce Allen let the Raiders organization down. I will say that. And Bruce Allen was also a good friend of John Gruden. So take that into consideration, folks. Think about that. And let's get back into the rest of this interview. Raw&Uncut, Raiders Raw Report, not to be confused with them hot dog heaven loving motherfuckers. We do it raw, uncut, in your face. Dick Tracy.
I can't imagine what that was like. And then how you entered the team. And did the team want him to play?
I can't answer that for you, Susie, because I was not involved in those meetings. As I said, I wasn't even made aware that Barrett had gone missing. Hell, I'd have gotten in a car like Nancy Drew or Harriet the Spy, and I'd have gone looking for Barrett had I known. But the first I learned that he had been missing was when Al called my room and said, they decided they don't want him to play because he had been missing. And I said, what are you talking about? I just saw him. He's fine. He can play. And again, many people were angry at Barrett. And of course, he should not have left the team, but there were very sad medical issues. And the thing that bothered me the most is by sending him home, that didn't just punish Barrett. That punished everyone in the organization.
Yeah, no.
Yup. And I think that was the missing link. That us fans, right, have been kind of like, where's it? What? This never added up. Things never made sense. We heard that Barrett Robbins went on a bender and he did this and that, and they were trying to say that he was mentally having issues, right, because he went on a bender. But Amy Trask, who is a very intelligent woman, right, had a conversation with him that morning when he was getting dropped off out there. And she said he was fine and he was ready to play. But the decision came from Bill Callahan and Bruce Allen that they weren't going to play Barrett Robbins. You think the players said, okay, yeah, we agree with that? Obviously they didn't, because of what Tim Brown and Jerry Rice said. Do not forget, Raiders Raw Report, we got receipts. Pay attention. If you remember, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, and other players had said that the game plan for that week was to run the ball. But then Friday came, and all of a sudden, Callahan, the head coach, right, Bill Callahan, who's calling the plays, running Gruden's offense, by the way, trying to run Gruden's offense against him, and he decides that they're not going to run the ball anymore, that they're going to go pass heavy. Well, everybody didn't like that because we had the best line in the game, especially when it came to running the ball. So there were certain players that didn't like it and spoke up, but there was one player in particular, his name being Barrett Robbins, who came to Callahan and said, please, dude, let's just run the ball. What are we doing here? Callahan said, no, we're going with the new game plan. This is why Barrett Robbins decided to go to Mexico, get his little, whatever he had to do, get his rocks off or whatever, but he made it back in time to play. He just needed to clear his head, dude. But certain officials had to put it out there about his medical issues and this and that, and that he was not medically cleared to play. Bullshit. Bill Callahan and Bruce Allen decided for him not to play because when they switched up the playbook Friday, Rice didn't like it, Woodson didn't like it, Tim Brown didn't like it, Robbins, none of the players liked what he was doing. And Al Davis could have saved us right there. He could have just fucking went old school and fired him. But is that going to happen? He's not going to fire him, hours before the Super Bowl. But this is what was going on, folks. This is why that Super Bowl was rigged. Callahan made sure our best lineman did not show up to play, supposedly, but he was ready to play. But he made sure that Robbins did not play. Once he came back from the bender, you're not going to play. Boom, we were fucked. But there's so much more that goes into this, and I'm going to bring another video about that goes in depth. If you haven't seen it yet, Raiders Raw Report will keep you informed. We're here for the misfits, for the have-nots, for the forgotten, for the ones that they do not want to fuck with, for the black sheep. Welcome to the dark side. Raiders Raw Report with Mitchell Benz, and this is how we do it, raw and uncut and in your face. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you for being here. Leave your comments down in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about it, and like we always do about this time, we out.